An important part of the final year of Seminary Formation at St. Joseph's Seminary College focuses on ministry to the Universal Church, which includes a missionary experience. So in early January, 3 groups left this exact spot on a mission trip to Guatemala, just as another group had done in November to the Indian missions in Montana. Following the church's command for every Christian to be a missionary, we left the comfort of our own home, our own country, and our own culture to immerse ourselves for a week in the small city of Esquipulas and Ashland, Montana. As the 7 days progressed, each group encountered an idea of mission that was even more profoundly Christian than we originally thought. Each of us realized that we had been immersed in discipleship. It was in this missionary immersion that we came to a better understanding of what it means to be a disciple of Christ, to deny oneself, take up one's cross, and to follow Him. For us, to deny yourself came with all the learning we had to do. Not a learning that takes place in the classroom, but one of letting go in order to embrace a world so different from our own.
The first thing that we were confronted with was the Guatemalan culture, which forced us to be open to new food, language, and music. This required that we deny ourselves the comfort of holding on to our native culture and ways of thinking in order to understand the Guatemalans. It was a time for learning, in which we learned to deny ourselves.
By their meekness, the people of Esquipulas showed me more about humility than any book I've ever come across. Guatemala also showed me a lot about the reality of poverty nearby. I was humbled to walk through the streets of Santa Ana because of the shacks that were composed of sheet metal and tarps. Why does such poverty exist in the 21st century?
Political turmoil has plagued Guatemala for many years, exposing it to an immense amount of abject poverty. We were faced each day with the profound reality of the poverty that exists in Latin American countries, something we could no longer be indifferent to brush away. Instead, we had to face this reality each morning as we set about the day, and came face to face with a language barrier because many of us could not speak Spanish.
One of the most touching aspects of my mission trip to Guatemala was my trip to the village of Santa Ana. During my visit, I saw families in total poverty, with many unable to afford even a pair of shoes. Walking through there, I found it difficult at first to focus on our mission, and instead I just saw the negatives. The people began to talk to me, and despite our language barrier, they seemed genuinely interested in what I had to say, and greeted me, a total stranger, with a smile.
Something surprising that I learned was that Christ never ceases to teach His children. On this mission, I had a conversion at the depths of my being. The gospel revealed itself and came alive in a way in which I had never previously experienced. The Beatitudes finally made sense when I was staring at poverty. Jesus' teachings made sense when I saw those who were fighting for their lives. The light of Christ was present in Esquipulas, and it taught me through conversion.
Deny oneself, take up your cross. Learning about these differences in culture, language, and standard of living was quite a shock to many of us, and it was difficult to deny our own habits and preferences in order to share in the Guatemalan culture.
That is why we took time each day to pray and reflect on our struggles and learning, so that we could offer our efforts up as a spiritual sacrifice to God.
In this way, we came to see how we were learning to pick up our cross like Christ.
The faith and devotion of the people of Esquipulas to El Cristo Negro was astonishing. Some will break into tears as they lifted up their prayers and as they touched the crystal case, protecting the image in an effort to feel closer to him.
I was blown away by their true devotion and sincere faith. These people were truly into their prayer. I was touched by the real hope and faith of one young girl leading her stumbling mother to kneel when I realized that this woman seemed to have some sort of mental disease that caused her to shake and hardly stand or kneel at all. But she was praying harder and with more devotion than I could ever imagine doing.
Through our learning and prayer, we seminarians received formation that allowed us in a small way to be able to minister to the people of Guatemala. Christ, who was commissioned by the Father to us, in turn sends us out as laborers in the harvest.
In the last year of our formative process, we are trained to mission the Universal Church. It is this foreign mission experience that will be vital in our ministries in the United States. This mission training will help us bring the gospel to others, allowing us to follow after Christ.
My time in Guatemala that was spent with the children of the orphanage was very profound. Smiles lit up the children's faces as soon as we walked in. We played soccer, basketball, hide and go seek, and many other games with them, but what they most enjoyed was our very presence. This was so evident as we went to leave. They clung to us, acknowledging that they didn't want us to go. They showed me in a deep way that our very presence as priests, as spiritual fathers, will be crucial in our ministry.
The experience of Guatemala allowed me to rediscover the fire of my heart for the priesthood. The profound experience of working with my hands to help a family build a garden box humbled me greatly. I vividly remember a young boy watching attentively as I used the electric screwdriver to place the last screw. He was captivated by what we were doing and he wanted to help. This young boy taught me to focus and not to look at all they didn't have, but to look into every situation, looking for God's creative hand. This event reminded me that we are cooperators with God in bringing about salvation. If we only search for God, we will find Him. We simply have to look.
The people of the neighborhood gave us an incredible goodbye. They took the time to make sure we knew that something good had happened, and that our efforts had an effect. This concern of theirs was selfless. They were incredibly grateful, even though it often seemed as if they were giving more to us than we to them. It was a time where we could reflect on our stay in Esquipulas and see it for what it was, a gift from God.
The world is full of opportunities for mission. When one says mission, we often think of a distant and destitute land. We tend to think we have to go out from our own country to see poverty, or to see the effects on a people who have suffered oppression. But mission can be found just around the corner, in a group of us, founded in Ashland, Montana.
There we were able to learn from and listen to people who had suffered throughout the history of our country, and came away with a new understanding of that suffering.
When we first landed in Montana, we didn't know what awaited us. The town of Ashland was not going to be the first place we would see. In order to get there, we had to travel 2 hours away from Billings. Undeniably beautiful rocky mountains, mesas, and plains adorned the landscape. The first reservation we reached was that of the Crow, and afterwards that of the Northern Cheyenne. The reservations were not overwhelmed by houses, businesses, or places of recreation. Instead, they were rather small houses that had been added onto with plywood to fit the growing families. Because of our warm welcome from the Crow and Northern Cheyenne tribes, we learned the native ways, encountered the Universal Church in a rich way, and grew in our compassion for them as we learned about the social issues that the natives endured on a daily basis. During our time there, we were able to live alongside the people. Who would have thought that we could have a missionary experience in our own affluent country?
The Montana Mission Immersion gave us a clear overview of the culture of the Native Americans on their reservations, a people who had been isolated from the macroculture of the United States. There was also the opportunity to learn about the lives of the Native Americans who attended boarding schools established by religious at the end of the 19th century. We stayed at St. Libre Indian School, a school begun as a mission staffed by Ursuline nuns from Ohio. We heard testimonies from alumni who claimed that this had not been an easy experience for the Native people. In one of the most moving testimonies, a Native American woman recounted her life during her stay at St. Libre. It was so sad how rigid the school authorities were at that time. She said that the culture of the Native children was rejected. However, it was impressive how she valued the Second Vatican Council for the way that it presented a God who is loving and merciful and does not punish anyone because of cultural differences. We were especially affected when she said that it was because of Vatican II that the church became more human. We were also able to visit different classes where we interacted with the professors and students. One class we found outstanding was the drum class, where the teachers shared this part of his heritage. Sacred drumming is passed from generation to generation. There is no written music, but rather it is all taught like a trade. We heard one of the songs from the Northern Cheyenne tribe. This song was not like that of a concert performance, but rather a profound, prayerful experience. Though we could not understand their language, we could feel what the song was all about by the transcendent tone and manner in which it was presented. During our visit to the language classes of the two tribes, we heard how these people had been subjected to cultural diminishment, the effect of treatments by the government and by people, missionaries in this case, those from our own Catholic Church. Some religious orders did not allow children to speak their own language. They were even punished by having their mouths washed and re-washed with soap in a great basin, over which stood and still stands a statue of the Sacred Heart of Jesus. This left lasting impressions on these children and led to the language being nearly wiped out. Now, fortunately, this has changed, and the school actually has separate language classes in which the Northern Cheyenne and Crow languages are taught by their own people.
We saw this message from the USCCB being put into practice throughout our immersion program. We could talk about many customs we witnessed, such as the smudging rite, the tabernacle, the music, and the vestment used at Mass. However, the sweat lodge was perhaps the most impressive. It is a gathering to pray, give thanks to God for the simple things of life, and ask for strength, peace, and guidance. A prayer for the grace to live a better life and build a better society. Hot rocks were placed in the middle of the sweat lodge, an 8-foot in diameter, hot covered with many blankets. The leader of the prayer welcomed us. Then started a ceremony with a profound meditation, recognizing our weakness as human beings. After that, he threw some water on the rocks, creating hot steam for the first round of the sweat. As the steam rose and the sweat began to stream from our bodies, he gave thanks to God, while a couple of other members in the lodge began to sing in their native tongue. The sweat lodge was a prayerful and powerful experience, and it was so unique, like none other that we had ever had. For the Native Americans, the sweat lodge is the place where one can reflect, pray, and purge the body and soul of impurities. What we experienced there helped us to go deeper and recognize the graces that God has given us.
of suffering, but we saw the face of Christ in the Native Americans we encountered. There were so many different causes of this suffering: a high suicide rate, problem with alcoholism, premarital sex, low development on the reservation. The list seemed endless. Saint Laurent Indian Mission, however, is a beacon of hope as provides many services, such as an on-site foster home, an active food pantry, counseling, dormitories for students, a free education, even a work program where one works for points, which may be redeemed for food and other things.
Our goal in this mission was to come to know the culture of those tribes, their style of life, language, food, music, and religion or spirituality. We definitely feel that we grew not just as seminarians, but also as persons from having had this experience. Through the knowledge we gained of the Crow and Northern Cheyenne cultures, so different from ours, our values of tolerance, respect, and acceptance were immensely strengthened.
For us who have chosen to discern a life of ministry, it was clear that this mission trip was a true gift that will enrich our Christian journeys.
So we returned home, but our missionary experience did not end as we returned to regular seminary life.
Each of us continued to grow in our understanding of mission as we reflected on our experiences. In each of our hearts, Christ made his call to discipleship stronger and more concrete. Deny yourself, pick up your cross, and follow me.
At his first Chrism Mass, as the Vicar of Christ, Pope Francis encouraged priests to be shepherds in the midst of their flock, living with the smell of the sheep on them. Our immersion into mission and immersion into discipleship gave us important formation for ministry in the church. In our learning, prayer, and missionary work, we experienced anew what it means to be disciples of Christ. Whether one encounters mission abroad or locally, one thing that remains the same is that Christ is truly amongst those who are suffering.